Okay, it's been a little while since my last PECS and politics. I've been a little bit busy trying to organise various things, which I might mention another time. But in the world of politics, particularly British politics, it's been an interesting, not sure exciting is the word, maybe for some people, but certainly an interesting time in British politics, as well as some other places around the world. But my focus is particularly British politics, on what is probably, or who is probably, the worst Prime Minister in British history. Of course, that is subjective. So I want to give you my take on BoJo, Boris Johnson. Now let's first of all start at the very beginning. This is a young man who comes from a diverse background. Yes, he is of Turkish background, believe it or not, despite the fact he likes to raise scare stories about lies about Turkey joining the European Union, which maybe one day it will, and maybe one day it should, but at the moment it ain't happening. So he's of Turkish background, he's of also Jewish background as well. He was born in New York City because his father was working in New York City, so I would assume he has both American and British citizenship, which maybe comes as no surprise to some people. And he grew up in a family, a very wealthy family. He went to private, although in England we call it a public school, rather confusingly, but let's call it private school, Eton, which is perhaps the top private school in England. Now, I didn't go to a private school, but my brother did. He passed the exam. We didn't pay. We didn't have that kind of money, because people pay ridiculous money to send their kids to private schools. And if you do, yes, you may get a very good education, but what I also noticed about many, not all, but many of my brother's friends is there is this certain sense of entitlement that a lot of them have, and many of them come out with even more inflated egos and arrogance than many of them who went in. And I did see a change in my brother, who I love dearly, but he does have a slightly different personality to me, not just because of DNA, but because of the influence of hanging around some of England's wealthiest and most entitled. But anyway, Boris Johnson went to Eton, along with the likes of former British Prime Minister David Cameron, and of course Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'm not going to do a video about Jacob Rees-Mogg. I could, but I could be here for a very long time, and most of it would involve swearing, probably. So anyway, Boris's background as a child was very privileged. Now, as we know, however, he grew up with quite a different mentality to his other members of his family. It often happens. Me and my brother have quite different views on various things, although they have changed a little over time as we've gotten older and matured, perhaps. But this week we saw the resignation of his brother, who is very pro-European, anti-Brexit. His sister, who's a journalist, who's also very anti-Brexit, got the plane going over, flying into Maastricht Airport. Her sister Rachel, who was also a candidate for the newly formed Change UK group, which is anti-Brexit. The father also was a very prominent personality within European politics, worked in Brussels for a while, and supposedly is pro-European, although he's become obviously supportive of his son as well. It's an uncomfortable and difficult balancing act between wanting to be supportive of your child, even if he is a lying buffoon, and probably criminally irresponsible and reckless, but for some reason you want to support that. I love my child no matter what. And having your own political convictions, which is perhaps another problem that Boris Johnson found this week. So, Boris. What can be said about Boris Johnson? Well, many people think he's very funny. I've never really found him to be particularly funny, to be honest with you. I've always thought he's a bit of a buffoon. As I just said, I looked at him and just kind of going, oh, God, roll my eyes. I don't actually think he's particularly funny. And I think the problem is that, okay, if you had a friend like that, if he was your friend, you think, this is my friend Boris, he's really funny, he's a bit of a, he's a bit foolish, a bit of a clown, and we love him, The problem is, Boris isn't just a friend of people. He's not, he doesn't just do perhaps a normal day job, or he's not just an accountant where he does his job, goes home, and okay, he can fuck up people's finances, maybe, individually, or he works, I don't know, in any other job. But the problem, or even as a journalist and bullshit all the time, which of course he did. He didn't just stick at bullshitting in newspapers, which actually carries its own danger and threat because of the power that the media holds in our society. No, he doesn't just do that, he's a politician. He sees himself as being a politician, and not only that, he's the Prime Minister, a role which he has dreamed of doing since he was a child, a role which he has seen as his God-given destiny since he was a child. I don't know why. The guy has no substance, he's vacuous, he lied his way to the top position. And I don't think that's any understatement there. He was sacked from at least 2 jobs with 2 different media outlets for lying. He made statements during the referendum campaign which have turned out to be complete lies. You know, even those of us at the time knew they were complete lies, but they have been exposed to be complete lies. He will say anything for voters. The only thing that comes out of his mouth is to please the voters, even if the next day it turns out not to be true. I wouldn't dare to provoke Parliament, antiquated methods. A week later he's proroguing Parliament. I don't want to go to a general election. The next day he's offering a general election to be had. The guy is a complete bullshitter. From child to adult, he has been bullshitting his way through life. Now, why is that so worrying? Well, it should be. You should be standing there, sitting there, lying there on your back thinking, what the hell is happening in politics at the moment? Of course, you know, people lie. People tell white lies. Politicians are traditionally economical with the truth. We make mistakes. I've lied. But to have a career based on lies and be so blatant about the fact you're lying. The problem with Boris Johnson is he's actually a really bad liar. Because if he was any good at lying, we wouldn't know that he was doing it. But we do know he is a liar. He has lied his whole life. Now, the biggest issue I have, and I don't want to really get into his personal life particularly, because his personal life is his personal life as far as I'm concerned. Whether he has 5 or 6 children, I don't know, I don't care. Whether he was married to the mother, I don't know, I don't care. Whether he had extramarital affairs, I don't know, I do not care. The only thing that I raise as a question is how can somebody who is a father wish to be so public and so blatant about the fact that you lie so openly? What example is that showing to your 5 or 6 children? Really? You want your children growing up thinking this is the way to progress in life? You want them to look at them, yeah, this is my dad. They grow up thinking, this is my dad. The worst Prime Minister in British history who lied his way to get there. And has caused huge divisions, even more divisions in British society than already existed because of the Brexit vote. And is threatening to cause enormous damage to the British economy, not to mention taking away young people's rights so that I can no longer freely live and work and retire within 27 other European countries, although I probably could because I'm going to be exceedingly wealthy and inherit from my daddy's trust funds for me, of course. So I can go and live where the hell I want, most likely in some tax haven somewhere, if the UK hasn't already been turned into one once we leave the European Union. Little Johnsons. Boris Johnson. What a lovely chap. Now, the other thing I want to say about Boris Johnson is as well, of course, he's, as I've just said, he will say whatever he thinks the voters want to hear. He believes in nothing. He has no conviction, no principles whatsoever, apart from in himself. And he's rubbish. I mean, he's absolutely rubbish at being a decent person. He has no substance. He's got really no policies, particularly around Brexit. He's not even negotiating at the moment, so he doesn't really know what he wants to do. He's just, if we were just a little bit more optimistic, a little bit more positive in Britain, it will just happen. Positivity, woo, it's magic. It will just happen like that. Just believe it. Just believe in yourself. Yeah, okay, because positivity and optimism will deliver a brilliant trade deal, a brilliant agreement deal with the European Union. And with other countries around the world, of course. So this is a man who exists on optimism and positivity, supposedly, and bullshit. So this is what kind of powers his career. And of course, he's a populist leader, very much like Donald Trump. Donald Trump already described him as Britain Trump. What the hell that's supposed to mean. Somebody who can't even use the English language correctly. No dig at Americans, just at Donald Trump. And I gotta say, listen, many people think I exaggerate, because listen, I've referred to some of the European research group of which Boris Johnson is, I believe, a prominent member, of which he's turned the Conservative Party into. He's now kicked out 21 members of the Conservative Party, moderate, centralist MPs. He's taken the whip away from them. So he's not kicked them out of the party, but he's taken the whip away from them. And he's kicked them out of the parliamentary party. Many people think I exaggerate a little bit when I refer to these people as fascists and Nazis with a little n. Okay, that's perhaps unfair. But you've got to remember, it may have ended with concentration camps and gas chambers, and that is horrific. The most horrific, heinous acts by any group of people on the face of this planet. That's how it ended. But it didn't start like that. It started with populism, with nationalism, with lies, with deceit, with creating an enemy out of the other. When Boris Johnson talks about the European Union, he uses the language of war, of surrendering to the EU. These people are not our enemies. We're not at war with the European Union. And arguably, and I would argue quite strongly, that the European Union has actually been a greater friend to the British than the British government has been. That it's been looking out for our welfare as people, as a country, than the Conservative governments over the last 3 years have been doing. These people are not our enemies. Fascism, nationalism, it can end with the most heinous, horrific acts if it's not controlled and if it runs unfettered. It doesn't begin with concentration camps, mass murder and gas chambers. That's not how it begins. But it can end like that. Maybe not quite as extreme, but it can certainly end. And we've already seen the growth of racism and violence in the United Kingdom against certain groups of people because they feel that they have a license to go out and do this now because, hey, vote Leave won. And I would never stand here and say everyone who voted Leave is a racist. No. But most people who are racists voted Leave because that was a motivation for them. It was a motive for them to say, I want to vote Leave, I want to kick out all these Polish people. And certainly I don't want more Polish people coming over. These people speaking funny languages that I'm too lazy to understand. I don't like difference. I don't want to see foreign food being sold. Smell their food coming out their shops. I don't want them coming over stealing the jobs that I'm not doing anyway. That's how it begins, and it can end in far, far worse situations. So we don't learn from history, and we should learn from history. And the European Union existed to try and overcome that past of hatred of one another, to get countries intertwined and working together on a common good. And now Britain wants to destroy that. And Britain wants to drive the mentality that it fought against. It didn't fight against Germany as such. It fought against the mentality of fascism and racism and hate and evil. That was what it was fighting. And so were many Germans fighting against that, who suffered in their millions, were gassed, were killed, were tortured by their own government. So let's not forget that. Important lesson. And BoJo, bumbling woman with messy hair, is leading that. Now, I gotta be honest with you. I think that Boris Johnson is an extremely immoral leader. But let me just reflect on myself, Of course, people will sit there and say, well, yeah, but you're immoral as well, the things that you do. Because I've worked in porn and prostitution. I can live with everything that I can do. And I can justify everything that I can do. We can disagree. You can disagree that what I do is immoral. And you can, make a case. And I can make a case against it. We could do a whole other video arguing about why my life is immoral. That's fine. We can do that, and I've attended many debates around that kind of subject. But I'm not standing here as a politician. I know my limitations. I would love to go into politics, actually, but I know that I would be looked down upon by many people. My morality would be questioned. Not that I couldn't defend it, but I know it wouldn't be a very easy ride. and the likelihood of me being elected is probably very slim. I'm not quite sure why Boris Johnson, I want to get into politics because I'm entitled to do so, despite the fact my history of lying is very public. Despite the fact I make racist comments over and over again. And he seems to rest his success on his career as the Mayor of London. Most of Boris Johnson's achievements as Mayor of London were started actually by Ken Livingstone. There are very few achievements that Boris Johnson achieved by himself. And what astonishes me even more, and more worryingly, is that so many people in British society, particularly English, like this guy, admire this guy. I just totally despair. What is it about him that you find so likeable? Oh, it's because he's so funny. Yeah, that's great for a politician. Yeah. He's more down to earth. Really? Really, this guy come from an extremely wealthy family, went to Eton, talks like that. How many people do you know who are down to earth and to what? Because he bullshits and lies? Is that what the common man does? Maybe he does. I don't know. But the fact that the British people take him in hook, line, and sinker. I know, even she's not happy, and she's Romanian. Maybe that's why, I don't know. I'm lost. Anyway, that's my view on Boris Johnson. I'm sure I have many others, but my rule with making these videos for PECS and Politics is I don't make any notes. It is impromptu. I just say what I want to say. I might make mistakes, as I often do. Feel free to pick up on them. I might repeat myself, which I often do, and go on for far too long, which I am right now. So, ciao for now, although let me know your thoughts below on the BoJo.